Good. All right. Thank you guys so much. We're finally back on a Tuesday. So appreciate you being here and working with our schedule the last couple of weeks. Got plenty to get through today. Before we did, though, I wanted to bring up our Pensacola Energy Director, Daryl Singleton, talk about some great news and on all the work that they're doing on our compressed natural gas vehicles, and we're in a switch to renewable natural gas. So as you know, there's a lot of different effects or steps we try to take in terms of improving our environment and across all different departments. And so we're at the point now we want to announce and give you a little background on that. So Daryl, if you want to come on up and tell us what's going on.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. Hi, everyone. I'm Daryl Singleton, the Director of Pensacola Energy. One of the things we were directed to do when the Mayor's transition team moved in, we look at how could we help the environment, what was out there we could do. We started looking around for renewable natural gas, a source we could use. We were very fortunate now. This took months into the development. Starting June 1st, we were able to secure renewable natural gas for our compressed natural gas vehicles. Therefore, in the month of June, the city was, all of their compressed natural gas vehicles were running solely off of RNG. If that doesn't confuse you enough, CNG and RNG. But renewable natural gas, we're getting this natural gas from BP. It is from landfill gas. It's all pipeline quality. And this is helping us to reach our goal of being carbon neutral by 2030, the city's goal the council has given us. So it's a big increase. Right now the city has a fleet of around 87 CNG vehicles. We're adding them every year in order to have that zero footprint. That's why you'll see your garbage trucks running on CNG. You'll see all of our large crew trucks for Pensacola Energy running on that, because we're doing everything we can to be green and help the environment.
What's the importance of being carbon neutral?
Well, the importance is we're not polluting the atmosphere at all. You know, if you're the number one pollutant, diesel's worse than gasoline. Now, if we can go to compressed natural gas and move that to zero, then nothing's coming out of the tailpipe. And especially with this one, we're recapturing gas from a landfill that would be going to the atmosphere. So therefore, we're kind of killing two birds with one stone. We're not wasting methane from a landfill, and we're not producing any toxins out of the tailpipe.
So you're hoping to meet this goal by 2030. What would you say a goal would be in the 10 years following that?
That would be tough to say. Technology is the big one, as we all know. Where are we going to end up going with battery technology? We embrace solar and batteries because we feel natural gas ties into that closely. You can run natural gas for industry. All the power plants are moving over to natural gas. It's a good product that's natural in America as far as our strategic reserves, so it's available for us. I see that lasting a long time. But if technologies would come along and somehow we could marry with the electrical side of the house, would be fantastic. It's just kind of how technology proceeds in the future.
Cool. Thank you.
How does the cost of this renewable natural gas compare to what you are doing before?
Well, that's the fantastic part. That's why we were working diligently these past few months to get this program in. We're paying exactly the same. We're not paying a premium. As you know, there's always a premium for renewable natural gas, high demand for it in California and other states. We were very fortunate to work our agreement with BP for the landfill gas that we're getting at exactly the same rate we're paying for non-RNG gas. So there's no extra cost to our customers at all.
Right.
Good. Thank you.
Daryl, yeah, thank you. Daryl can keep. And you can see, I got to bring someone up much smarter than me to give you all those technical aspects and questions. But Pensacola Energy does a great job across the board, not only on initiatives like this, but as you see it grow, the customer base growing, and even what they do in employee engagement. We really are proud of what they're doing at Pensacola Energy. Daryl, thank you for sharing that. A couple other things we'll get to. An update on CRA officers. We've been trying to get the two officers that have been funded implemented. One of the two new CRA officers started on June 26th. So We have one of those two in place, and if you recall, we've had conversations about this already. The focus on the two additional officers, 3 and 4 in the CRA, were to be on nights and weekends, and that we had our first 2 officers that had been really focused more during the day, during the week. And I think if you talk to people in our community, I think if you talk to downtown businesses, they saw a very positive impact with having the first 2 officers down there. And so our hope was, when we look at downtown Pensacola and our CRA urban core especially, we're a city of 55,000, but we're a city that acts much larger than that on nights and weekends, special events, gallery nights, when we see those numbers pulse up. So to be able to have additional folks focused just on that area, it was very important to us. So the second CRA officer is coming as soon as possible. It will probably be later this summer. Obviously, everything like that is a moving target with vacancies, and making sure we got enough feet on the street to cover all of our beats is our priority before we start getting this initiative going. So the goal is, I know by the end of this month, maybe early next month, to have the second officer in place. But we do, since I know you guys have asked about that a few different times, I wanted to make sure we gave you an update that we've got one on and a second one that's coming. The update on ShotSpotter, again, the funding, the $800,000 or so is going to be going to the Sheriff's Department. And if you recall our press conference, that's a partnership between the PPD and Sheriff's Department. But with that, and it's weaving into the Real-Time Crime Center, our PPD will be working hand in hand with the Sheriff's Department in terms of the 3 square miles that we have identified in the city that need coverage. So while that'll be kind of headed up by the Sheriff's Department, again, we'll be right there hand in hand with them as we get all of that set up. So the active transportation plan, just a quick reminder, I mentioned this last week. The active transportation plan is now available for review and comment at City of Pensacola /active transportation plan. And feedback is from the public can be given through tomorrow. So make sure that if you have any thoughts, it's a big report, lots of interesting information about what our priorities are in terms of walkability, bikeability, multimodal transportation. So it's an interesting read. Make sure you check that out. And I believe that is it on my updates. Happy to take any questions that you have.
Mayor, we read a story last night on a recent homicide for the weekend, and Sheriff Chip Simmons says a common denominator when it comes to violent crimes in the county is black-on-black crime. Mm-hmm. Would you agree it's the same in the city?
I would agree that crime that happens within these 39 square miles is a problem for me no matter what it is. I can't speak to the percentage of black-on-black, white-on-white, or anything else. But at the end of the day, we follow the data, and just as an example with ShotSpotter, we identify 3 square miles based on the data that we have. Where are we hearing gunshots? That's how we try to operate here. So if the data suggests, if that's a complement to some other theory of it having race-related, age-related, or anything else, our primary focus is where do we see the most crime, and that's where we want to make sure we're investing as much manpower and resources like the ShotSpotter agreement. So, I can't speak to the data of any race-related part of the issue, but any crime is really too much for us, and what we know for a fact in the city of Pensacola is it'll be the number one issue 20 years before I was the mayor, and it'll be the number one issue 20 years, 100 years after I'm the mayor, is public safety. People want to feel safe where they live. Whatever we can do to help improve that's what we do.
I have another question.
Yeah, go.
Talking about cemeteries, I think we reached out yesterday about a cemetery we thought was owned by the city and it wasn't. Mm-hmm. When it comes to code enforcement and things like that, though, there are a couple cemeteries, at least in the city, that they're just not visually appealing, if you will. The ground has helped kind of shape some of the monuments there, and just kind of, I don't know, doesn't look pretty. Is there something you would do to fix that? Is there something you could do to fix that?
Yeah, we're starting to have conversations. It's always complex in the idea that, like you said, the one in question now is a city-run cemetery. So what is our duty as a city to make sure that aesthetically, people are holding up, whether it's their own personal property or cemetery. Of course, our code and our city has an obligation to make sure that we're holding up those requirements. But it's also someone else's property to own and operate. And so I would say that this is sparking a conversation, of course, internally for us to have a larger assessment of, like many things do, whether it's whether you're adding a stop sign or public safety or anything else, we start to open up conversation about that, and we've got a great team, looking at that and looking into it. But I think that's something that's worth doing. Obviously, these are not only places that we want to make sure are held up to the standard that everybody's held up to, but also where people honor loved ones and ancestors and things like that. There's an additional level of value that these places create for families and for individuals in our city. So yeah, I mean, I think as we try to manage, so many different things within the city, this is a good reminder for us to get out there and assess what we can do and what we can't do, to be able to help. Yeah.
Looking ahead to next week is the city council meeting. It's the only meeting this month that the council's having. What are some of your priorities or agenda items that you want to get done this month?
Yeah, so obviously there's been a lot of work on the budget. We've had some conversations I've mentioned to council before. It'll probably go to August about how we're going to handle ARPA funding and reprioritizing or what changes, if any, that we're going to make. So that'll go in August. But the main things on there now, we're the first reading of the food truck court ordinance is coming up this month. I mean, I'd have to have the agenda in front of me to go through every item, but I'd say, when we have one meeting a month, we typically have more, agenda items. But I really think this summer has been focused on, it's my first budget. We've spent a lot of time on that. There will be an update on the structural assessment for City Hall that we've gotten back. If you recall, there's some ARPA funding that was in the previous administration had been allocated towards City Hall improvements to council chambers, some other places like that made a lot of sense. But since then, this is the first structural assessment that's happened at City Hall in a long, long time. I don't remember how many decades, but it's been a while. So we've gotten that report back recently, and we're going to be presenting those findings because there's some expense to what we need to do to be able to maintain this building the same way you've seen us trying to maintain the other buildings, the fire stations and everything else, community centers around the city. So, so we're going to share that information with council, and really not necessarily for action, but it will be our job as administration to figure out how do we best navigate the improvements that need to happen that we already were planning on, as well as not at the sake of those improvements, not fixing fundamental things that came through in a structural assessment of the building. So, it's not an issue of that we're worried that the building is going to have any major failure, but there's some definitely some things that need action immediately in the next 24 months, and as well as some long-ranging issues. So we'll take a look at that and share that with council.
What's the status of Malcolm Young? You've had the original assessment plan. What's that?
Yeah, so we had sent a letter to Lighthouse, our 365-day, that both sides had the ability to say, hey, we're going to be out of this lease. Certainly, we don't have the ability to serve that. We know that Lighthouse has been working on potentially a new location, finding a new location that on their own, that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with us, but obviously any way that we could be amicable to helping that happen is good. And our Parks and Rec department is working on the best way that we can provide for them. As I've said, I feel like we have an obligation, whether it was in a lease or not, we feel like we have an obligation to try to help them through this school year as best we can. We do, no doubt about it, we have limitations. We don't have an empty community center sitting there that everything can take place for one school. So it's going to be a little bit of a mix of that. It might be PE over here or basketball practice over there. Those kinds of things. We're doing the best we can. And then at that point, we'll assess. We've certainly had conversations. We know the state of the building. We know the general idea of the expense to do something with it, and that it probably doesn't make sense. But we're not going to take any concrete action on Malcolm Young at this point. Our priority first is going to be let's meet our obligation of this lease. In my mind, our obligation of the lease. But what we do from there, of course, we're considering demolition. We're considering there'll be a lot of things to consider. But obviously, we've had conversations about that because we're thinking what we know is rebuilding it or renovating it isn't feasible. So what's next? You have a parcel of property, and we've got affordable housing issues. We've got lots of different things that we could try to fix with that. So, but as I said, we've put a pause on taking any concrete steps in that direction until, and we should be fairly close to that. We've had several conversations amongst our Parks and Rec staff as well as with Lighthouse. So I'll feel better about moving forward with a plan, but that should be the second priority to making sure we meet our obligation.
It's kind of a three-part question on the budget.
Okay.
I guess, first, what is the timeline for getting a draft of the budget to the city council? And then two, I guess, you'll have the property appraisers numbers back at this point. Are you considering any type of millage change at this point?
Yeah, so it'll be very soon what's going to, in terms of getting what we are planning to get to council. I know we're at the end of that. And of course, that's when the process begins of having meetings and conversations. As far as the millage, Amy Lavoie, I don't think she's in here. She could tell you to the decimal, but I know we were somewhere between 10 and 11%. And so that...
But is there any change from last year to this year's numbers?
Oh, you team in terms of millage?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. At this point, we have no intention of having an increase to the millage at this point now. But in terms of the property appraiser is what I was referring to. What we've seen is the increase in revenue. But that number doesn't become official until July 1st. So that's why I say where we are right now is we're incorporating that final number into, and I just don't know to the decimal what it is, but I know that's what we were expecting, and I believe that's what the number was somewhere in terms of the property tax increase.
And then, has there been any talk between, I guess, the council executive and the mayor's office as far as the council doing a budget workshop anytime?
Yeah, there has been conversation about that. I don't know where if it's landed on a particular day yet. But as I said, as you can tell from my answers, we're kind of finalizing everything on our side right now. So there are irons in the fire on those things. We've started to have conversations about when. I don't believe we have a final day yet, but once we get that number from the property appraiser's office, on July 1, then we start working. So I know, we are in the final stages of getting our book prepared that's going to council at this point. Yeah.
Just circling back to the budget.
Yeah.
You said generally 10% is, there's a lot of people talking around town, over the county. Property appraiser obviously is waiting on the state Department of Revenue to officially bless those numbers. But 10% is what you're saying?
I was saying our estimate, I believe, was between 10 and 11% of an increase. And as I said, I'd have to get the exact number of what we've been told post July 1. We can follow back up with you, and Amy can let us know that. But yeah, I believe that's in line roughly with what we had seen last year.
What would that do to your top line? Do you have a rough number?
I don't isolate it to just that increase, but you could put it together of the budget from last year. We know that generally 34% of our revenue in the general fund, at least 34% of that is generated by property tax. So it's significant. It's there is no larger revenue stream in the general fund than property tax. And then, and again, when we talk about what people living here and the value of people living here is you add 14% for franchise fees, which are on power bills and light bills that, basically half of our general fund to pay for police, pay for fire, all comes from people living here, one way or the other, whether they own property and or they're paying franchise fees within the city. So yeah, I don't have exactly what that isolated increase would be year to year, but certainly we can get that for you. Yeah, go ahead, John.
The bridge, there's a ceremony this week.
Yep.
A couple of questions about the bridge.
Sure.
I think you're going to be at that ceremony. What's your message to the community today about how important it is to have the governor approve General Chappie James' name on that bridge? What message does that send? the community and to the area.
Well, what I'll say, actually, it was really cool. Personally, I went to Arlington Cemetery for the first time when I was in Washington, D.C. this past month, and of course that's where General James is buried, and that was cool to see. But look, I mean, you see all the accomplishments that Chappie James had in this community, or in this country, excuse me, and that he was a hometown kid and went through a lot. No question about it. So no, I think it's great. I think at the end of the day, any time we have the opportunity to honor great people and great organizations that live and give this city a great name, I think that's a great opportunity for us. So there's plenty of other efforts, of course, off the bridge and some of those things to honor him. We're actually working on alongside the museum right now with some grant funding that they had received to help. I know our CRA is working alongside them as well. So actually just had a conversation about this with Senator Broxton about those signs and what an honor that is for Chappie James, the museum, and all those kind of things. So no, I think it's great. I think it's a great thing for our community and to give it a great new name.
Bridge number 2.
What's that?
One of the more popular pieces of content we published recently was the FDOT video of the LED lights testing on the bridge. Mm-hmm. And this weekend we got a number of comments, people asking why they didn't use that for the 4th of July, red, white, and blue, and all that. So it raises the question: how will the municipalities here collaborate to determine the light show on the bridge?
Sure.
What occasion? How will that come about?
So,
thought about that?
Yeah. So a few different things on that. One, let's talk about it being used, whether it was for Blue Angels or 4th of July. The issue is it's still in testing, and people say, well, looks like it's working to me. What do you mean about testing? Well, there's other nuance that comes into that. There's a certain amount of burn time that needs to run on these lights to ensure that they're working properly, right? It's not just turning them on once and saying it works and then turning them off. So that's one element. There's a Coast Guard element to how the lights work, and the brightness under a bridge with someone on a boat coming through. And, those lights have very much the ability to be, they are relatively low. That's the ability of how bright they can get. So FDOT, that's not something we're directly involved in, but FDOT, of course, is working hand in hand with the Coast Guard to make sure that permit is all clear. So technically it's not. So the reason it wasn't on 4th of July or on Blue Angels was because it's not ready to be fully functional yet. It was on last night, and they continue to test. As we move forward, we've started to have preliminary conversations. It's important to understand FDOT holds the remote, so to speak. I do not. And so I believe what the general strategy is going to be, like they've done in other parts of the state, is they'll have a general holiday calendar that's clear and transparent to everybody, and that'll kind of be what it is. Now, the bigger question, the variable that we will work with them on is, when are the lights on, and which ones are on 7 days a week? The stronger lights that are on the side that you see, perhaps those aren't on 7 nights a week. They might be on on the weekends, and so none of that has been, to my knowledge. We've started to have the first conversations with FDOT about that, but we have not come to any conclusion. The interesting thing is, interesting stat for you is that if the lights were to be on 7 days a week, it costs about $30,000 a month for the power. So, you talk about, that's quite an expensive power bill. Now, that's not because FDOT is not willing to do what we asked them. That was an interesting takeaway from our meeting. That's quite a sporty electric bill. But we'll. So there's really those two conversations. When can it be lit up for certain holidays, certain weekends, certain events? And yes, I get emails, about all sorts of events of can we do that or not. And the answer is technically we can't do anything right now until this testing's done. And then the second part is ultimately FDOT's. In every municipality, every state, or every county, whoever, wherever these bridges are, it's different. So it's just whatever was arranged beforehand. So So more to come on what that'll be. I imagine what my hope is we would say, hey, you know, the underlighting and you know, the arch is X days a week, and then, you know, 8 to 11 on the weekends we'll do, you know, something that's more lit in a general fashion. So it'll be something like that I think will be produced out of this once FDOT gets out of the weeds with the Coast Guard and others.
My last question to you, this is just in from the newsroom. You know about any kind of plans for the old FDLE headquarters in Old Halifax? I guess they just moved into a new facility.
No, nothing concrete at this point. There's been conversations over the years of what they were going to do. You know, that's not to say I haven't checked with our permitting office or anything. I can't. We can ask, but certainly not to my desk at this point whether they're going to do something with it. I know there have been conversations over the years about changing zoning, or, you know, could a school go back in that place? But anything to this point has just been merely conversation.
Just got a couple updates and some things. What's the status of the pickleball facility at the port? Where are we in that?
Yeah, so we were down to our last two things. I think it's imminent now to get it signed. That it will be signed. Yes. The last two things were we were wanting to ensure clarity on, you know, our expectation is that at renewal that there would be the hope is that this continues to phase up. So at renewal, what we wanted to see was something concrete that said, hey, we've spent X number of dollars over this amount of runway to show that we're not going to just do a phase one and that be it for the remainder of the lease. That was important to us, and they've been very amicable to that. The second part, actually a little more nuanced, was we wanted to make sure there was language that included that if, on the off chance we hosted an America's Cup, that we would have access to be able to lease the facility. We believe that 45,000 square feet 4 years from now, when it's a Super Bowl size event, or it's going to be, and of course, again, both of these things we're very, you know, the potential operators, leaseholders are very amicable too. So these weren't points of contention. We just needed. I would say that the first one was a little ambiguous. We had started to use calculations based on economic or tourism development. It was a little too gray, you know, so we've added a little extra language to that. So it was really just bouncing those two things around, and we should be good to go at this point.
Children's Resource Center, do you plan to bring it back to Children's Trust next month, or do you have a timetable?
Yeah, I can't. I'll have to get with my staff to be able to say for sure. My intent is as soon as possible. So I would, my answer would be that, barring something that is unforeseen from a time standpoint or that comes up, we'll continue to push that aggressively.
And then the last thing, we're about 60 days away from Baptist moving out of the West Marino district.
Yeah.
Are y'all in discussions with them? What their plans are?
Yeah, we are. You know, I think what we know is that they've got, you know, the significant hurdle of the old property is the hospital itself and the demolition of that hospital, which is, you know, has an extremely high price tag. So we know, Baptist knows how important those 50 plus acres are. You know, that's a large piece of land in a relatively small city. And so, you know, I think it's our duty to do everything that we can to make sure that that property is used in the highest and best use possible. So if you recall, we, on the second bucket of Hurricane Sally DEO money, we had put in a request for $5 million that would go towards demolition of property at Baptist. That wouldn't get it done, but I think that's a step in the right direction. And I can probably speak better philosophically that, you know, I'm on board to figure out what our solutions are to partner with them, and perhaps that means, you know, the property becomes, you know, it's an arrangement where it's city run and operated, and that property, if we were able to get the demo done. We haven't worked all those details out yet, but we are aligned in knowing that getting something going on their old property that's good for the neighborhood, that's good for our community, that can provide service to our community, is a good thing for Baptist, and it's certainly a good thing for us. So we'll continue to work with them. And one other addition to that, as of this point, we continue to move forward with the previous 4%, 9% conversations that we had with PACES on the existing Baptist property. So our role in that at this point is still continuing. So you know, they'll put those back in sometime this fall, and we'll cross our fingers and see if those are some you know, we can get those this time around. Well, good. All right. Thank y'all so much. Appreciate it.